Japanese?
The Japanese side.
Modern Chinese, you like this, classical Chinese, up and down.
All right, first things first, we are going to talk a little bit about ASO 21. Right, we had two readings. One of them was actually reading in the syllabus that was ASO 21, and then the problem solving had a good reading, so we can fly through these slides. We're going to get caught back up. All right, Chad talked a little bit, a week ago maybe, on ASO 21. It is something that the Air Force uses quite often for problem solving. There have been other iterations before ASO 21, namely Total Quality Management, TQM. That was around when I came in, and people hated it, so they renamed it, and it's ASO 21. Now, TQM was, I guess the shortfalling of TQM was that it was very tactically based. It didn't necessarily reach down to the root level cause problems, and so it didn't solve a lot of things. It didn't end up working that well for the Air Force. So ASO 21, again, Air Force Smart Operations for the 21st century is what ASO 21 is. Similar construct, but just set up a little bit. It is all-inclusive, and what I say with that is it reaches into every Air Force specialty code, and it's for all airmen. Okay? It's not just for the general officers or different levels, the wing base. It could be at the major command level. It's at the Air Force level. It's all airmen. Okay? What the main intent of that ASO 21 is, in the events that we have for ASO 21, we're trying to maximize the value of whatever asset we're trying to save and minimize waste. Okay, those are kind of the two. And that waste may be money, it may be other resources, it may be personnel, it may be man hours, it may be footsteps. Maintenance is always like counting footsteps. How many steps does it take for me to get to the workbench, to the toolkit, back to the jet? How can we do this? Have you seen this crazy? Yeah. Maintain. They're all crazy. There's also a part with it with continuous process improvement, right? You may figure something out, it may work for a while, but you got to keep looking at it. How can we make it better? Maybe we have some new technology that we can plug into it now that makes it even more efficient. Okay, so there's continuous improvement. Also in the reading, it talked about the Airmen Powered by Improvement and Innovation API. And really what that is it's a website where any airman, total force, so Guard Reserve, civilian, can go in and say, hey, this is a problem that I saw in my works section. This is how I think it can get fixed. There are sometimes monetary rewards associated with that. If you save the Air Force, I don't know, X millions, maybe you get a percent. I forget what the breakdown is. Okay. But it's our ideas as airmen and how we can make the Air Force better. And it deals with cost savings, quality, productivity, and so. Any questions with ASO 20? No. In the reading, it also talked about the 8-step process that's used in that, and that's what we're going to be talking about. A lot of tie-ins from our last class, where we were talking about critical thinking. Everything in the Air Force, again, as I've said a couple times, we love checklists. Critical thinking is kind of abstract at times, right? It's sitting around and just thinking about stuff. We always need a checklist, right? So that's what we're going to get into with this problem solving. We are going to talk about the OODA loop. You guys get to talk about OODA looping at field training. Anybody remember who created the OODA loop? very well. That's correct. And then on Tuesday we'll do an exercise where we can critically think and use the 8-step. 8-step process again is part of AFSO 21. One thing I really do like about AFSO 21, just like you all, as you're going through the semester, you get so busy in what you're doing with classes, you don't necessarily have a chance to stop and breathe, right? The days go into the weeks and the months, right? It's so busy. AFSO 21 pulls people out of the work environment and puts them together in a room together, and they say, you've got X number of days to try and figure this out. So they're not trying, it's not like, well, do it on your spare time. Hey, we'll exchange emails a little bit and we'll try and figure this out. No. People come together, leave your work on this side, and we're going to figure this problem out together. Okay, so it's that I really like about it. Removing everybody, making them concentrate on one problem, giving them a construct in this 8-step process that you can work through, and solving our problems. And that's why I think AFSO 21 is really effective and why it's good for us. Samples of behavior, what we're looking for. All right. The objective of problem solving. Pretty obvious, right? We got problems in there, just like any business, any company. Whether it's mission related, people related, or work center. How are we going to fix it? What's the approach? We got to make sure that we're increasing that comment capability. It's not necessarily like we can ask for more stuff, right? No, we're pretty limited. We're limited in funding. We're limited in the number of airmen we can have. We're limited on the number of aircraft we have. Kind of finite numbers. So we have to figure out how we can be more efficient, make sure that we're not wasting any of those assets, and be effective with what we have in our combat mission. Got it? Bottom line though, with everything in the Air Force, I don't care combat or not, safety. Sustaining safe and reliable operation. Okay, safety is always going to be the main driver. Alright, OODA loop. Obviously y'all have seen it. Do you operate in that, do you use the OODA loop on a daily basis? Bi-daily. Oh. Is it something that you actually functionally think of when you're making decisions?
I don't follow the with my head, but like I guess the natural was like discovering natural course of thought, and I think that usually pretty much.
It is pretty natural, right? It's just some guy named Boyd decided to put it down on paper and made it. Yeah. So all of us, when you come up against any problem where it's not like a snap judgment to solve it, you go through this in your brain, right? You observe what's going on. You try and orient yourself to the problem. How do I fit in this? How can I maybe fix it? You start to decide different courses of action. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. And then you act. Maybe you've got those two courses of action, and you act on one of them, and it is not the right course of action because you got an outcome that you did not want, right? So you go right back into the process because it's circular. Check things out again. Figure out if you're in the right spot. Go to those courses of action again. Maybe you come up with a different one now. Because that first one, you got, even though it was maybe a fail or a failure, you still gained information off of it, and you fed it back into the loop, and it's going to help you problem solve. So, right. When we were looking at the 8-step process, this is how it breaks down into the OODA loop. Looking at any type of problem, it's generally because something's broken, right? And we want to fix it. We gotta fix it. There might be an opportunity to make something better. It may be good right now. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Who likes saying that? Anybody? I do sometimes. It's not terrible. But generally it's not that. It's not always the advice or the best. Or we might have a new initiative thing. Maybe we've got that new technology. How are we going to use it? We got to figure that out too. Example I'm going to use, or try to use through most of the going through the OODA loop and the 8-step process was a deployment that I did in 2010, Operation Enduring Freedom. About the same time that we were getting ready to deploy, President Obama said, hey, things aren't going so well in Afghanistan. We're going to bump up our military footprint there by 30,000. Okay, so we strategically, the military, had to get 30,000 more soldiers, Marines, airmen, whatever it was to Afghanistan, along with all their cargo, because generally people have stuff. And so how do we solve that problem? All right. So what are some things that right off the bat we got to get them from here to here? What are some things we got to think about?
Transportation.
Transportation. You got to get them there somehow, right? How do you get them there?
Fly.
That's one answer. Is it the most efficient answer?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Ships.
Ships? Yeah. How are the shipping lanes in Afghanistan? Not so good. But you could at least get them down here into like Karachi, into the seaports, right? And then you can take them over land, or maybe you fly them from here, or you put them on tractor trailers and you take them up to Afghanistan. Right? What are maybe some issues with that? What are some issues with the sea option compared to the air option? Much slower, right? Much slower, but you can put a whole bunch more stuff on a seagoing vessel than you can on one each aircraft. What are some other problems with that option, with the sea option, or that whole sea to road option?
If you have to travel over land, like if you have to travel, like let's say like your base is in northern Afghanistan and you have to travel through southern Afghanistan, you might encounter like unfriendly people while you're driving, and that puts you all at risk.
Okay.
I assume it take all kind of diplomatic mumbo jumbo to get you to drive.
Yeah, a lot of diplomatic mumbo jumbo. What if Pakistan decides that they don't like that we're using their bases to fly, RPAs out of and blow up bad guys that they're actually supporting? What else?
It's just plain dangerous.
It is plain dangerous. Yeah, you bet. Yeah. How do you think the road quality is to Pakistan? Do you think Eisenhower developed that interstate going through? And you've only got like one pass between Pakistan and Afghanistan on here, and they kind of have some bad weather every once in a while. So that shuts it down. So you've got some serious problems. So you gotta build those pros and cons with each different type of transportation, with getting the cargo passengers in Afghanistan. Right. When we were looking at it, Air Mobility Command was coming up with a lot of velocity initiatives. Again, using the 8-step process. How can we do things better? How can we do things more effectively, more efficiently? Okay. C-17's pretty expensive operate. Cost of fuel is like the highest cost in the military for the expenditure. I don't know what the number is, but in any given year, that is honestly one of the highest costs for the military. C-17s are a limited asset. Okay, you've only got 222 of them across the world. That sounds like quite a few. I I guess, but when you're looking at moving 30,000 passengers and all their stuff, it becomes very limited. And finally, you got those crews. You know, these aren't drones or anything. You got to figure out how do we get them where they need to be. They can only operate so many hours in a day, right? Before they have to have crew rest. So you got issues with that. So there are a lot of internal issues with that base problem as well. It's like video. This has nothing to do with it. It's just cool. Hopefully it's not too loud.
Heavy airdrop. Now, the drone shoot, and the drone shoot will eventually pull out. The initial shoot, they'll pull out the load. Now, this guy for like the most,
Moral of the story is to get to do some really cool stuff. Alright. That has nothing to do with space. But it's so cool, isn't it? I'll tell you what, when those boats go out the back, it just, the vacuum that it creates, it just sucks out of air. No big deal. Alright, we already started with our step one, right? We're clarifying and validating that problem. We gotta get those packs and that cargo from the United States to Afghanistan. How are we gonna do it? How can we correct the problem? We certainly have already observed firsthand, right? Because it's 2010, we've been at war for 9 years. We brought stuff by air, we brought stuff by sea. We know the different aspects and what's available. We know the problems, we know the pros and the cons. But we got to look at them again and how it fits to this specific situation. Now, a presidential surge, do you think the president is looking, hey, let's get this done in 5 years, or the president's like, hey, let's do this? What, pretty quick? Yeah, so where do you think they're going to, what's going to work better then? That sea option or the air option? Probably more we're leaning more towards the air option, right? Because you know that end user, your customer, has a big vote in determining whether your mission is successful. And in this case, our customer is the president and the U.S. people. So we better use every asset we have available. It's kind of like a bit of a blank check. Like, I guess it doesn't matter if we spend a whole lot more in order to get it done. Okay? So we're observing. We're figuring out the game plan. We're figuring out the environment. What can we do? What can't we do? We're defining the problem. We're making it concise. We're getting that clarity. We're getting the accuracy. Like we were talking about with the critical things. Step 2, still in the observe section. Breaking down the problem. Figuring out if there are any gaps. We talked about that beast more before. I forget what that was.
like when we talked about goals.
We talked about goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can use it. You can certainly use it for this as well, right? It works well. Still in step 2, looking at types of waste. Yeah, we already talked about this one. Waiting. There's no waiting in this type of scenario. We got to get it done now. So maybe it is a waste, but we have calculated that it's an acceptable waste. We're gonna take that one, and it's good. In a typical 8-step process, though, you're gonna find those waste items. How can we make it better? That's gonna be a big one. Right, step 3, we're moving to the orient process. We're gonna set up our targets for improvement. We've got the problem. How do we, we're starting to figure out how we want to fix it. Okay? We're the information should be gathered about the problem. Step 4 in the orient, determining the root cause. How many times when you all are trying to figure out problems that you're running into in life, you kind of stop at the first thing, and it's that Band-Aid fix. Do y'all have that issue, or do you go and find the deepest root cause? I know I'm guilty. I find the first thing that I think is the issue, and I'm like, yep, that's got to be it. And maybe that'll be good enough for a while, but it's just that Band-Aid fix. And the problem keeps going up, right? You're like, slap another Band-Aid. Pretty soon you have 8 Band-Aids. It's really not good. The best you can do is to dig as deep as you can, find that root cause problem. Now, I would definitely say you got to look at this too. You got to look at what's within your sphere of influence. Okay? If it's something that you have no control over, and that's the root problem, you can maybe go to who owns the root problem and see if they'll correct their deficiency, but maybe they won't. Sometimes you can only go back to what you actually have control. Who likes brainstorming? Yeah? Not so much? We do a lot of brainstorming in the military. One team, one fight, right? Typically when we have problems, we don't go behind closed doors or try and figure it out ourselves. I always like, when people start throwing out maybe answers to a problem and other people build on it. Everybody's got different experiences, and you can come up with a really awesome answer from whatever the initial thing that somebody threw. All right, into our deciding, developing countermeasures, which is really finding solutions, right? The best course of action. Typically, in a military decision-making model, we like to see 3 courses of action. That's kind of the standard. You're going to have to come up with 3. One's never going to be given. If you take one course of action as the solution set to your boss, they're going to say, "Where are the other 2?" All right, so if you ever do something like this, come up with a couple different options. And those options may be hybrids off of the first one, and that's fine.
I have a question. So if you bring 3 solutions to a problem, though, isn't there always going to be one solution that's probably the best one that you kind of push? So, why do you have 2?
You got it. Yep, you are going to recommend one course of action.
But you
Right.
just have the other two as like fallbacks if there's complications for the first one.
Well, and it shows that you did a bit more research in depth. And maybe the person that you're presenting this to has a piece of knowledge that you don't have. And what looks good to you from your level, maybe one of the different options that you brought up is really the right answer from someone who's seen it from a higher perspective. And it helps you in making those courses of action because you're looking at the facts, you're looking at assumptions. It helps you all expand your brains too in coming up with different possible solutions. It's kind of it's a good practice, especially because remember it's circular, it's a loop. So maybe that first course of action doesn't work, but now you've got contingency courses of action that are already developed. You can loop a whole lot faster instead of going back to stage one. So you got that courses of action. Now you implemented one. You're going to see it through. You're acting, right? This is the big one. Step 6. With implementing this course of action, that's just not enough, right? I mean, you could just let it go, and whatever happens, but that's not how we do this. We're going to analyze what the results are to see if that course of action was really effective. We're going to look at those. We talked about second and third order effects on Tuesday, did we? Sometimes I myself before I'm during that class.
I talked about that there.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe we thought the initial effect from our course of action was great, but we didn't think about those second and third order effects that came up because of our course of action. So we gotta look at those. And we may have to provide training. People may not know how to implement that piece, so that's a good thing. Confirm those results of the process. Make sure we got exactly what we wanted. And if we did, we want to share it with everyone. We want to standardize it across whatever. Multiple bases, the major command, whatever. We're not going to sit on it and hold it. We shared success. Boom. That was really quick. Let's see. Okay. What questions do you have? I didn't carry my scenario through here, did I? Yeah. Kind of rushed through it. I got a lot of droopy eyes. Talk about it more. Who wants to talk about it more? What? No.
I guess I kind of like to know what lessons were learned after the course of action was taken.
Well, here's a good one that we developed when we were looking at honestly just operating stateside with C-17s. Quite often, if I go back to that map way back when, and this is a good example from, so at the time, I was stationed at Travis, alright, but everything, Air Force Base, everything's at Dover Air Force Base, we don't have any Dover. Okay, so everything's over here. So we get on our plane, nothing in the back of the jet, operate empty across the U.S. A couple hours flight time, right? We pick up stuff here, and maybe go to Ramstein, refuel, and then downrange, back, maybe pick some stuff up, maybe pick stuff up downrange that needed to get back stateside, because their units always rotating out. Or maybe we pick up cargo and packs from Ramstein, go back to Dover, which is the port, drop it all off, empty, all the way back to traffic. Okay, mission complete. Crew jumps off. To get another crew on, you got to give them 24 hours of crew rest. Crew dogs are just babies. Use pilots, prima donnas. Get used to it. If you're not one, you'll hate it. Right? Maybe not hate it. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. All right. So there was a lot of time with that quality of life pieces with moving the mission. We couldn't move the plane 24/7, right? And there's a lot of time that plane's operating, a lot of wasted fuel back and forth. So what we did is, on that first flight then, we would put like 3 crews on the jet, take them to Dover. 2 would jump off. The 1 would load up, keep going to Germany. Or maybe we'd have, let's say we dropped 1 off at Dover, another crew stayed on that was operating, and another crew still on there, and then we go to Germany. All right, so both the crews would go to bed, but we've got 2 crews here now, right? So the next day, 1 would take the stuff down to Afghanistan, fly back, 24-hour mission, the crew spent. But we've got 1 in crew rest now. They can keep the jet moving, come back here, all right? Or they're not. Sometimes we go to Nova Scotia. Come back to Dover. Now we're not flying back here. We're picking more stuff up. That crew that was sleeping here, turn them right back around, head them back to Germany. Okay, so we were able to save like $7 million in fuel costs in a matter of 3 or 4 months. It was ridiculous. So that was a good example of where we used the entire loop, found a good course of action to try and save some bucks, and it was okay. Now you guys want to go. Do you have something?
Just like the fuel costs, more about this side note. I saw how $2 million just for that. That's a lot.
We think all the flights. I mean, you got to multiply it. You got those 3 or 4 months. You multiply by the number of times that we were transiting the U.S. The cost of getting those crews ready. Now there were some other costs, right? Because now we got a crew sitting here, and we got to bring some maintainers with us because Dover has C-17s, but all of a sudden they got 10 more, and those maintainers are like, you're crushing us. You got to bring some other people in to maintain those jets. So there were some costs involved in that, but I mean, when you look at fuel, which is $3-4 a gallon, but you're burning 16,000 pounds an hour. When you're flying, it goes fast. Yeah, that's quick. Especially going inside.
So the first way the missions were run was you go from California to Dover, and then Dover to Britain. So the first process, that was the first one, and it took them how long to find out that it's just kind of a waste from California to Dover?
I don't know. Years, decades. Yeah. It was just the way we did things. Okay, nobody took the time to say, is this the smart thing? Are we operating efficiently and effectively? And once they sat down, closed the doors, and said, let's figure this out. Amazing. Solutions come on.
When they do those, do they usually initially pick those problems by how much things are being the cost? So they'll pull a red flag, there's a lot of money being spent here, let's see if we can be more efficient? Or do they just kind of where do they pick things to start getting decided to what's going to get changed?
Yeah. A lot of times I see it not necessarily as direct dollar figures. Generally it's manpower hours. Okay? And of course you got manpower, which you can certainly correlate into dollars. And so you're trying to save manpower because either you're doing more things with less people. There's got to be more efficient way to do it. From what I've seen, that's generally. But certainly, I have seen also where there's new technology that comes in. How do we effectively use this? How do we make sure everybody's trained on it properly before we put it in the implementation? Nobody wants to know about overseas or over water heavy drops on C7.
The coolest part. Any other questions?
We will have the opportunity to do that 8-step process next Tuesday. We're going to do all scenario-based exercises, so we'll be able to apply it, and then we can look at it farther for any questions. Okay. All right. Thanks for waiting for me.
Oh, Lord.